The Denver Broncos and Atlanta Falcons are both trying to come back off of some really tough losses in Week 10. Week 11, we see the Falcons come to the Mile High City. Justin Simmons return. We've got that and so much more on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Falcons.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Couple of teams looking to bounce back here in Week 11 as the Denver Broncos coming off of one of the toughest losses to swallow in recent years, the blocked kick against the Kansas City Chiefs, and of course the Atlanta Falcons trying to bounce back after losing to the New Orleans Saints in Week 10. We're going to be bringing some good vibes here on today's Crossover Thursday episode, Locked on Broncos, Locked on Falcons. Thanks so much to all of you listeners out there that make Locked on Broncos or Locked on Falcons your first listen of the day every single day. My name is Sayre Bedinger, co-host at Locked on Broncos, here with Aaron Freeman, host of Locked on Falcons. And today's Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Aaron, it's been a while since the Broncos and Falcons got together. It's been a long time since the Broncos actually beat the Falcons. I know that we don't necessarily need to be starting off by talking about that. I know this is your show as well here, but if memory serves me right, it was the Peyton Hillis game back in 2008 is the last time the Broncos actually beat the Atlanta Falcons. I know they've had some tough matchups here in recent years, but excited to hear your thoughts on the game. I know your listeners are as well. Should be a fun one there in the Mile High City.
Yeah, that Peyton Hillis game, I had forgotten all about that, and now you're bringing back some very dark memories for me.
I'm sorry.
Where he just absolutely destroyed the Atlanta Falcons on that Sunday. But yeah, it's been a while, and it's tough coming off of some disappointing losses to some division rivals. Again, Sarah, you can let me know if who's the biggest. I just assume everybody in the AFC West hates the Raiders the most and whatnot, but I can imagine, given the Chiefs' recent success, that they may feel like the biggest rival to the Broncos. But I think everybody knows that the New Orleans Saints are the Falcons' biggest rival, and it's just a bitter pill to swallow when you lose the way that the Falcons did, and especially the way that the Broncos did last week.
Yeah, so it's not going to be, the Falcons are going to want to take out the aggression on the former Saints head coach, obviously Sean Payton, who coached against the Falcons for many years there. I know we've heard Matt Ryan has called a couple of Sean Payton's games with the Broncos now that he's with CBS and things like that. So we've gotten to hear the perspective from that point of view. But I'm interested to know top storylines for this game because bird's eye view, Broncos Country well aware, the Kirk Cousins signing in the offseason, Michael Penix Jr. being drafted by the Falcons. We're seeing those offensive weapons really start to emerge, maybe none more so than Darnell Mooney, who was quickly written off by Chicago Bears fans and looks like an absolute stud there. What are the biggest storylines for this game for the Atlanta Falcons? We know they're 6-4. They've got a lot to play for, obviously. It's been a tough sledding, division these last handful of years with, I know it's not been that difficult to get in the playoffs, but at the same time, very difficult. Now that we're in the second half of the season, or the back nine, what's the biggest storylines for the Falcons right now?
Well, the easy storyline this week on offense is, do the Falcons get their starting center Drew Dalman back? He's been out since week 3, exited that Chiefs game on Sunday Night Football and hasn't played since. I don't think that his presence is going to really change the outcome of this matchup. He's a better player than his replacement Ryan Nuzul, but Nuzul's been solid. So I don't know if it's going to suddenly shift this matchup if Dalman is playing, but certainly that will be a slight boost to the Falcons offensive line. But I think really for me, what I'm most intrigued about in this game offensively is sort of the matchup of who do the Broncos put Patrick Surtain on? Because I think whoever that guy is, whether it's Darnell Mooney, whether it's Drake London, is probably not going to have a big game because of the ability of Patrick Surtain. And so whoever the other guy that is not covered by Patrick Surtain is probably going to have to carry the Falcons offense and be that type of guy that can get 10 to 15 targets and 8 to 12 catches, 100, 150 type yard type of performance to really carry this Falcons offense. And we've seen stat lines like that from both Mooney and Drake London, most recently in that week 5 win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the Falcons threw the ball 58 times in that game. So it's understandable why those guys put up huge numbers. But in a, I guess you could say, normal game where Kirk Cousins is only throwing the ball 35, 40 times, can either one of those guys put up that type of production? I think the answer is they can. We just haven't really seen it yet, and I think they definitely need to do that this week against the Denver Broncos, just because of just Patrick Surtain is so good. It just feels like he's going to take away one side of the field. And from my eyes, Sayre, maybe you can correct me on this, but it does seem like when teams do have success throwing the ball against the Denver Broncos, it's often at the expense of Riley Moss more so than anything else because of how good Patrick Surtain is. And that's not a knock on Riley Moss. It's just you're playing against arguably the best corner in the NFL. And so teams are going to basically say, we're not throwing it to his side of the field. We're going to throw it to your side of the field. And, it's kind of a sink or swim situation. And so I think the Falcons will need either Drake London or Darnell Mooney to have a big game against Riley Moss again this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, Pat Surtain followed DeAndre Hopkins around the entire game against the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw the Broncos kind of abandon that strategy a little bit against the Ravens when Pat Surtain wasn't necessarily following around Zay Flowers, although I think everybody kind of agrees after seeing the results that was probably a bad mistake. So I think we will continue to see Vance Joseph match him up against whoever they deem to be the biggest threat. My guess would be Drake London. And yes, Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan, those have been the guys that teams have had a little bit more success against, although Riley's done his best to kind of make it the lesser of two evils as much as he can this season. Defensively for the Atlanta Falcons, I think everybody's kind of been hearing the Falcons, they're not getting sacks, but we know that sacks aren't always the greatest metric for pass rush productivity. That was really the area that everybody was kind of focused in on. Hey, this team needs to go after Dallas Turner or Jared Verse, whoever it may be in the top of the draft. It's continued to kind of be an issue for them. The Falcons are not great at getting off the field on third down. Is that one of the biggest storylines for you defensively for this team going into this game, or what are you looking at the most?
Not particularly, Sayre, just because the pass rush has not been there, so it's not going to be there. They've been getting decent amount of pressure, but this is not a pass rush that's really going to be disruptive. So we're at the point in the season here on Locked On Falcons where it's just like, it is what it is. They're not going to be able to pressure any quarterback. So they have to do all the other things besides pressuring the quarterback and sacking the quarterback to play good defense. And that has been a very mixed bag for the Falcons. They haven't been great stopping the run. They did a decent job last week against the New Orleans Saints, but certainly I think they'll have to step up a little bit more against the Broncos. And I think for me, the big issue is going to be less about pressuring the quarterback, but when Bo Nix is running, I think that's really going to be a major thorn in the side. The Falcons have really struggled against mobile quarterbacks like Bo Nix these last couple of years, whether it's on scrambles, whether it's on design runs. Their most athletic linebacker is Troy Anderson. He's dealing with a knee injury. He's been dealing with that all year long. The one game that he did play against a mobile quarterback and Jalen Hurts early in the season didn't really slow down Jalen Hurts, but ever since then, he's been in and out of the lineup. And, you've seen Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith and all these guys scrambling for, decent gains. And Bo Nix blows all of those guys out of the water from an athletic standpoint. So he could really do a lot of damage in this game. And so that to me is going to be the thing. If the Falcons, even if they're not getting a ton of pressure, when Bo Nix breaks outside the pocket, if they can contain him, and not allow him to convert in the red zone and convert on third downs and all that stuff, I think that will be a huge thing for this Falcons defense. So to me, the big story is, do the Falcons have the horses on defense with a nicked up Troy Anderson to be able to contain that? And I don't know if they do at this point in time.
No pun intended, I'm sure, on the horses there comment. But look, I know Broncos Country very eager to see Justin Simmons back in Denver. I've got a number of friends going to the game we all love Justin Simmons, of course. I mean, he's legendary at Broncos Country, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact he can make on this game based on the fact that, he was there last year, Sean Payton's first year with the team, but lots of new in Denver this year as Justin Simmons makes his return to the Mile High City. And speaking of the Broncos, we're going to break down a couple of the key storylines for this team offensively and defensively going up against the Atlanta Falcons, including can they keep the SMA train rolling in the running game? We've got that and more for you coming up next on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked On Broncos, Locked On Falcons. Today's show is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time, it's our most precious commodity, so you don't want to waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. But how can you spend your time wisely to actually improve yourself? Well, you can check out the courses that they offer over there at Hillsdale College. And there's a number of different ones that you might find yourself interested in. And you know what's the most interesting about it? It's free. In fact, they've got more than 40 free online courses. including Constitution 101, the meaning of and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more that you may be interested in. And all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in whenever. And plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, it gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And what you want to do is you want to go check out this Falcons and Broncos game right now, where the spread, Broncos are favored by 2.5 points at home, but kind of an indicator there that they think it's going to be a bit of a toss-up, over under a 44.5 total points in this game. So kind of expecting it to be slightly on the lower scoring side. But check out FanDuel.com for all of the different bets that you can place on this game. Visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. That's FanDuel.com. The Denver Broncos are looking to keep the Estime train rolling, and defensively, are they going to be able to put pressure on Kirk Chains, the big money Kirk? We're excited to find out. We're going to talk about it, me and Aaron Freeman, on today's Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Falcons. But thanks so much to all of you out there that make us your first listen of the day every single day. We really appreciate all of you. And if you haven't already done so, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Aaron, let's talk about this. The Denver Broncos haven't been the best running team in the NFL this season, largely due to the fact that Javonte Williams, he's kind of been, I don't know, it's been tough sledding for Javonte. The guy that we saw in his rookie year, breaking all these tackles, getting on angry run segments every week, he's not that guy anymore. And in fact, he was kind of effectively benched last week for rookie Audric Estime, who looked really good against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're all eager to find out, is Audric Estime going to be able to keep things rolling this week against the Atlanta Falcons? When you look at this Falcons defense going up against a Broncos run game, that's kind of that they've had some really good games. They had over 200 yards against the New Orleans Saints rushing. That's an area I think that they're going to really try to pound the ball on the ground and give Estime every opportunity to take over this game.
Yeah, and I think that's a good strategy for the Broncos, because pretty much every team can run the football against the Atlanta Falcons. Last week was the first time all year long that they did not give up 100 yards rushing. I think they gave up like 96 to the Saints, so they got awfully close. And like the Dallas Cowboys, one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL, I think ran for like over 130 yards against the Falcons. So if you're looking to get your run game going, the Atlanta Falcons defense is usually the defense that's usually a good indicator that you will be able to get it going. So if you're looking for Estime to have another big day and show why he should be the new RB1, I think this is a good matchup for him. The Falcons tried some different looks on defense last week. They're traditionally a 3-4 team. They dabbled with a little 4-3 looks and whatnot. It didn't really make that much of a difference in terms of improving their run defense, but we'll see what they do. They've dealt with some injuries. They're going to be down to Quan Graham at D tackle. I think he had suffered a torn pectoral. We're going to get to see their rookie D tackle, Brandon Dolis, for the first time next week. Maybe they'll get more run from Eddie Goldman, their nose tackle, who's been solid in the middle, but has only been really playing as a 3-4 base defensive tackle. And so maybe they'll get him some looks. But usually the key to success running against the Atlanta Falcons is get them in nickel, so go 3 wide receiver sets, run in between the tackles, and the Falcons really have no answer for that and really haven't had an answer for that all season long. So we'll see if that changes this week. It will be a great week for the Falcons defense to kind of step up in that way, but so far it has not. So we'll see.
That's going to be really interesting because Sean Payton, we all know, loves the 12 personnel. He throws out his two tight end sets frequently. He brings a fullback out there frequently. And when he does bring wide receivers out there, sometimes it's, Lil Jordan Humphrey, who's not exactly a burner out there in terms of speed. He's more of a big guy. They like his blocking ability. So that's going to be fascinating to see. I'm also very interested for the Broncos defensively. Against the Kansas City Chiefs, couldn't force any turnovers. It was problematic because you needed at least one or two extra possessions there against Patrick Mahomes to not get into the situation with the blocked field goal at the end of that game. In terms of ball security this season for the Atlanta Falcons, that's something that I think that the Broncos are going to need to make sure that they're forcing the issue, because the Falcons, they're kind of middle of the road with 12 turnovers this season. Obviously, Kirk Cousins, he's shown a willingness to throw the ball where he wants to. And 8 interceptions this year, not bad, pretty on par for the course of where we've seen him in the past. The Broncos secondary has got to make plays on the ball. You talked about it in segment 1 with they're going to probably try to pick on Riley Moss a little bit in this game. Riley and Jaquan McMillan, when the ball's not going to Pat Surtain, those guys are going to have to make plays on the football in order to force some turnovers against this Atlanta Falcons offense, which we've seen capable of putting up a lot of points.
Yeah, I think the best thing that the Broncos may have going for them is the pass rush. That last week you saw a couple of fumbles from Kirk Cousins. He's not the most mobile guy at this point in his career. In fact, he's the very opposite of mobile, whatever, statuesque, whatever you want to call it. And so you can kind of get to Kirk Cousins, and he has had a tendency this year to not always hold on to the football when guys can get at him. And you saw 2 fumbles last week. The Falcons were fortunate to recover those, but that has been an issue throughout the season. And we'll see if the Falcons offensive line can hold up against this Broncos pass rush that I think has impressed everybody so far this year, to the point that they were able to trade Baron Browning in the middle of the season. Unfortunately, not to the Atlanta Falcons, who desperately could need someone like of his caliber. But I think it is one of those things where if you can get to the quarterback, you can maybe create some turnovers there. In addition to, Kirk has been known to force a throw or two late in games from time to time. And so if the Falcons are pressing late in the game, trying to score like they were last week, and we've seen a couple of times now this season, then you may get Kirk sort of pressing in that situation. And that will be the opportunities for guys on the back end to maybe get those turnovers as you're talking about.
Well, this is one of the most underrated matchups, I think, on the Week 11 slate, which is understandably, it's loaded. You got Chiefs, Bills, you've got a couple of other divisional matchups across the league, and I think that this is one that, man, it's getting a little bit overlooked, but there's a lot at stake for both of these teams. So what do these teams have to do in order to come away with a victory in Week 11? Well, we're going to break that down up next on today's Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Falcons. Today's Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, it's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that your lineups, they stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. And if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks is going to keep your lineup live. Prize Picks always puts their members first, and now they offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus, because it's guaranteed. And Prize Picks, you can go on there and check out for this game, Falcons and Broncos. Maybe you want to say Kirk Cousins is going to throw for more than 215 passing yards, or the guy that we just talked about, Audric Estime, maybe he's going to run for over 50 rushing yards. You can find all of those options and more on prizepicks.com. So download the app, Prize Picks app, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. As we jump into the fourth quarter of Crossover Thursday here, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Falcons, once again, want to say we appreciate every single one of you, everyday listeners out there, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. This is a huge Week 11 matchup between the Broncos and the Falcons. Obviously, the Falcons trying to go ahead and win the NFC South this year. Looks like they've got a real good shot of doing that, Aaron, which is exciting for your boys. You love to see that, because the Falcons, they've been trying to put this thing together for a few years. You had to deal with Tom Brady for a handful in Tampa Bay. It's their time this year. So they're trying to win in Denver this weekend. The Broncos trying to make the playoffs for the first time since Super Bowl 50, which is crazy to think about. The Broncos have always been so much more consistently in the playoffs in my upbringing, Aaron. I don't even know how to deal with this anymore. We just sulk about these types of things. But these two teams, a lot is at stake. I know this is AFC, NFC, but give us the three keys to victory here for the Atlanta Falcons in Week 11 as they come to the Mile High City.
Yeah, you're right. This is one of a handful of playoff contenders that the Falcons are facing. And so if the Falcons wind up winning the NFC South, this is kind of be a measuring stick to sort of see how they stack up against some of the other NFC teams that they may face in January. So I think the first key for the Falcons is to start fast. Basically, I looked up the stat that when the Falcons score a touchdown in the first quarter, they are 5-1 this year. And so you can do the math and basically tell you that they don't necessarily do nearly as well when they don't get at least 7 points in the first quarter of this game. So doing that against this Broncos defense, I think, will be huge for them to get off to a promising start. And number two, I think, in terms of keys to victory, I think you got to get Bijan Robinson going, in addition to what we talked about earlier, Sayre, where you're going to need one of your wide receivers, whoever Patrick Surtain is not covering, to kind of have to carry the passing game. I also think you're going to need that 1-2 punch from Bijan Robinson. And I think you can get him in some mismatches against the Broncos linebackers, particularly Cody Barton. If you can get him on some wheel routes, get one-on-one in the flat, Bijan can really make guys miss and really create and turn 5-yard plays into 15 and 20 and 25-yard plays. So I think if you can get him going, not just obviously in the run game, but also in the passing game, I think that will be huge to supplement whatever else you do in the passing game. And then the third thing is you got to contain the quarterback run. Bo Nix's legs can really be back-breaking killers for this Falcons defense that loves to play a bend but don't break style of defense. But what you want to do when you play that style of defense on third downs and in the red zone, you want to get stops. And the quarterback run game, whether it's design runs, whether it's Bo Nix scrambles, can really hurt this team in those situations and prevent them from getting off the field, whether it's, Bo Nix scrambling on a 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 6 or something like that, or, in the red zone and whatnot, being able to use his legs to extend plays and either score himself or buy time for his receivers. So I do think if they can keep Bo Nix's legs contained, that will be a huge part of their ability to win this game.
Yeah, that was something that we really saw for the very first time this season last week against Kansas City. Bo was really bottled up, and that was we haven't seen that yet. So I'm sure the Falcons will be looking at what Steve Spagnuolo did in that game to try to kind of duplicate or replicate that here in Week 11. I loved your second key as well, because the Broncos have struggled a bit this year with running backs catching passes out of the backfield. Last week against the Chiefs obviously stands out, but I mean, even look back games like they played against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bucs got some things going, getting the ball out to their backs in space as well. So the Broncos linebackers, they've been shuffling guys this year. Cody Barton is the lone starter from opening day. Alex Singleton obviously out for the year. We've seen guys getting shuffled off the practice squad. We've seen, Justin Simmons kind of in and out of the lineup. So going to be very fascinating to see how the Falcons try to exploit that, especially as you mentioned with Kirk Cousins not being the fleetest of foot. That outlet at the running back position can be very valuable to you in a game like this if you're the Atlanta Falcons. For the Denver Broncos, top 3 keys to victory. We talked about it before. Number 1, you got to find a way to force a turnover or 2 in this game. Definitely winning the turnover battle. Not telling you anything you don't know in that regard. Winning the turnover battle in the NFL is always huge, but I think especially with a rookie quarterback, if Bo Nix is playing mistake-free football, man, the Broncos have been tough to beat this year. But when the Broncos offense is, it rains, it pours sort of thing. When they're turning the ball over, they're giving extra possessions to the other team. It's just tough for this team to kind of hang in games. Number 2 key to victory, feed Audric Estime. We liked what we saw from the rookie running back last week against Kansas City, and you figure if he can do that against a defense like Kansas City, maybe he can build on that against Atlanta, especially playing at home. And number 3, just make Kirk Cousins' life miserable back there. I mean, Aaron touched on it earlier. A couple of fumbles from Kirk this year, 8 interceptions. The Broncos defense hasn't necessarily been super opportunistic when it comes to creating turnovers, but they do get to the quarterback more than most teams, more than really any team in the league. And Vance Joseph forces the issue. He's going to blitz a lot, and he's got guys who can get home off the edge, like Nick Bonito and obviously Jonathan Cooper, who got the contract extension. So those are the keys to victory for the Denver Broncos. And I think in this game, we're going to see just I'm excited for it, Aaron, because I feel like it's a turning point kind of situation for Denver for sure. Atlanta, it's not going to hurt them too bad if they lose this game, but you obviously want to start creating that distance when you have the opportunity over teams like Tampa Bay.
Yes, I think you nailed it, Sayre. It's not the end of the world if the Falcons do lose this game. It's going to be a tough matchup. I think, like so many Falcon games this year, it's going to come down to the wire, who makes the plays in the final 5 minutes to win this game. And hopefully the Falcons will do that. And obviously I know the Locked On Broncos listeners are not hoping for that, but it is one of those things where I do think this game is important for the sort of overall look of this Falcon team, because again, you're facing a very good Broncos defense and offense that isn't necessarily a juggernaut, but certainly has unique things that we've discussed that can really challenge this Falcon team in the run game and whatnot. Cortland Sutton as well, and the growth and rapport that him and Bo Nix seem to be growing as the season wears on. So I think there are going to be some challenges for this Falcon team, and I think these challenges, their ability to respond to these challenges, will kind of tell you a lot about whether this team is, hey, are they a real deal playoff team in the sense of they can go against one of the better teams in the NFL this year and beat them in their own home stadium, or are the Falcons just a playoff team because they happen to play in a bad division? And I think this game can really tell us a lot about this Falcon team.
It's going to be big time, and you know that you're going to be able to find all the coverage that you need for the Atlanta Falcons, for the Denver Broncos. Aaron will have you covered over there, Locked On Falcons. Cody and I will have you covered, listeners, over at Locked On Broncos. And hey, after making us your first listen today, go check out Locked On NFL with 2 new shows every single day. The Madman Tyler Rowland, I got to talk to him the other day. He is the madman. I'll tell you that right now. He's awesome at what he does. He'll be your double shot of espresso in the morning. And then Tony Wiggins, just always smooth with it. So go check those guys out over at Locked On NFL for your second listen of the day. But Broncos Country, Falcons fans, we'll see you on the next one. Have a good day.